Page 48, Journal Notes. Line graph. Solve the problems. Be sure to show your work. Lucy flies from New York to Florida to visit her aunt. This graph shows Lucy's trip from her home in New York to her aunt's house in Florida. Use this graph to answer problems 1 through 3. Number 1. Which part of the graph shows the ride from the airport in Florida to Lucy's aunt's house? Well, first, let's just look at the graph as a whole. In part A, this is distance from home compared to time. So in part A, she's leaving her home to go to the airport. In part B, she's waiting at the airport in New York. In C, she's flying to Florida. In D, she's waiting in Florida for her aunt to come pick her up at the airport terminal. And then in E, she's riding with her aunt to her aunt's house. So number 1 asks, which part of the graph shows the ride from the airport in Florida to Lucy's aunt's house? This is the airport in Florida. E is the ride to her house. So that's going to be section E, which is represented by choice C. Number 2, which part of the graph shows the wait at the airport terminal in New York? Section A, she's driving from her house to the airport. Section B is her waiting at the airport in New York. So that's going to be B. Number 3, which part of the graph shows the flights? C is where the most distance is changing from home over time. So that's going to be C, which is choice D. Kevin climbs, this is number 4, Kevin climbs 4 flights of stairs from the lobby of the building to get to his apartment. He watches the news and then walks down to the basement laundry room, which is a floor below the lobby. He checks on his laundry, then goes back up the stairs. He stops on the 2nd floor to visit a friend and then goes back to his apartment. Sketch a graph that compares Kevin's vertical distance from the basement and laundry compared to time. So we're comparing distance and time. Where he is depends on how much time has passed. So we have to label our y-axis distance and our x-axis time. We're comparing the distance he is from the basement laundry room compared to time. So the bottom, that whenever y is 0 right here, that is going to be the basement. So he enters the lobby of the building. He is a floor above the basement. So his distance is going to start not at the origin, but above the origin, where he climbs 4 flights of stairs to get to his apartment. In his apartment, he watches the news. Then he walks back down to the basement. At this point is where he's going to go all the way to the bottom, because now he's at the basement. When he's in the basement, he checks on his laundry. So the distance from the basement is not changing, but time is changing. So we go from here to here. It's going to be a horizontal line. When he leaves the basement, he goes back up the stairs to the 2nd floor. So when we do this, we have to pass the lobby, but we can't go all the way up to the 4th floor because he's not at his apartment yet. He stops to check on his friend. So again, we have a horizontal line because his distance is not changing, but time is. Once he visits with his friend, he goes back up to his apartment, where he should be even with the first time he was in his apartment. And that is what your graph should look like for number 4. Think about, this is number 5, think about a trip that you have taken or a route that you travel often. Sketch a graph of the trip or route and write a description. So this is all going to depend on the trip or the route that you are choosing to use. For me and my journal, I'm going going to graph my route in the morning to work. So this is the distance from my home compared to time. So when I leave my home, I travel to Midway, where I drop off my kid, my first kid. Then whenever I leave Midway, my distance from home gets closer because I have to drive by my road to go to Lollipop, but I don't go all the way home. Once I pass my road, I start getting further away. And then I reach Lollipop and I drop off Elena Beth. And once I drop her off, I continue my route to school until I arrive there. And that's exactly what my description should say. I'm going to label this A, B, C, D, and E. In part A, I leave to take Jared. I take Jared to Midway Elementary, where I stop in part B. Because I can't just push him out of the car as I'm driving by. I have to actually stop and let him out of the car. In section C, I get closer to my house, but I pass my road while taking Elena Beth to Lollipop, where I stop to let her out. In part D. And in section or part E, I drive to our school. And this concludes journal notes for page 48.